The range instructor called it an antique. That was generous. The other cadets called it garbage. That was accurate. Cadet Lena Vasic stood at the firing line of the Galactic Coalition Advanced Weapons Academy, holding a rifle that was older than half the stations in this sector. A human rifle. Bolt manual feed. No targeting assist. No recoil compensation array. No neural link interface. Just steel and wood and a scope the size of her forearm. The Keth cadet 2 lanes over actually laughed, out loud, without covering his mouth. "Is that a museum piece?" he said. Lena didn't look at him. She was checking her bolt. "Is it loaded with actual physical projectiles?" said the ethereal cadet behind her. "Chemically propelled," Lena said, checking her scope. "You're going to chemically propel a metal slug at a target?" "That's the plan," she said. "Against energy-shielded simulation targets?" She looked up, smiled. "Yeah," she said. Nobody in that building believed her. They were about to have a very educational morning. The Galactic Coalition Advanced Weapons Academy sat on Karevo Station, orbiting a gas giant with 17 moons. No strategic importance. That was the point. They needed somewhere quiet to train people to make things loud. The Academy ran a 14-week program, everything from standard Coalition energy weapons to heavy crew serve systems. The best instructors in the Coalition, the best equipment, the best simulation range in 3 sectors. 42 cadets in the current intake, 16 species. One human with a bolt-action rifle that she had apparently brought from home, which was not strictly allowed, which was also not strictly prohibited, which had caused the range commander, Master Instructor Devek, a Vorkai with 22 years of weapons instruction, to spend 40 minutes with the Academy regulations looking for a reason to confiscate it. He hadn't found one. He had not been happy about not finding one. Devek was not a subtle creature. He was 2.5 meters of professional skepticism wrapped in Academy gray. He had trained soldiers who could operate weapon systems under conditions that would destroy most species' fine motor control. He had trained crackshots, artillery specialists, and one very memorable Draxon who could operate 6 crew-served systems simultaneously. He had not trained a human before. He had looked at the file. He had looked at the species classification. He had looked at Lena Vasic's application portfolio, which was good. Very good, actually. Competitive shooting honors. Long-range certificates. Field marksmanship record for her district. In human terms, Devik had pulled up the conversion tables. He had done the math. The numbers were decent. For a human, he had filed that information in the same place he filed most information about humans, in the box labeled interesting. Irrelevant. He expected her to be competent. He expected her to be bottom half of the cohort. He expected honestly that by week 4 she would be quietly struggling and making excuses. He was wrong about all 3, but he didn't know that yet. Day 1, standard orientation range session, every cadet with their primary weapon, basic sight picture confirmation, basic calibration, 40-meter static target. Not a test, just a calibration session. Get comfortable, get zeroed. Show the instructor's baseline capability. The targets were standard-issue Coalition simulation panels. 3-centimeter accuracy threshold for a passing confirmation. 5 millimeter for distinction. Most experienced cadets came in at about 8-10 millimeters. The range ran down the line. Cadet after cadet, energy weapons humming, neural interfaces syncing, targeting assists calculating. Then they reached Lena. She took her time. She settled into position. She had a small notebook. Next to her, she wrote something in it. She looked at the target. She looked at the scope. She breathed out, very slowly. She fired. The range was quiet for a second. Then the scoring system confirmed the hit. Trivek looked at his tablet, then at Lena, then at his tablet. The Keth cadet in the next lane looked at the scoring board. Did she just scope-assisted, the Therial said. Old scope, but still magnification. Standard Coalition targeting assist give 2 to 3 millimeter accuracy, said a third voice. She has no targeting assist. She has a scope. So do we. A pause. 3.2 millimeters, the Keth said slowly. Manual weapon. No electronic assist, 40 meters. Lena was writing in her notebook. What are you writing? The Keth cadet asked, despite himself. Wind reading, she said. Station ventilation creates a microdrift at 40 meters, 0.3 millimeters left. I need to account for it at longer distances. He stared. You're accounting for ventilation drift. On day one, she said. Best time to learn it. Devick called the session. He walked down to Lena's lane. He looked at her target confirmation, 3.2 millimeters. He looked at the rifle. You zeroed that weapon to station conditions on your first shot, he said. I was close before I got here, she said. Adjusted for altitude and atmosphere during transit. You adjusted for altitude. The station sits at a different pressure than my zeroing range, about 200 pascals different. Affects the ballistic coefficient slightly. She paused. Not enough to matter at 40 meters. Will matter at 500. Devick looked at the notebook. You track conditions manually, he said. Yes, sir. Why? Your optic has an environmental sensor. My optic is 40 years old, she said. The sensor works intermittently. I've found I'm more reliable than it is. Devick looked at the scope. 40 years old, manually compensated. 3.2 millimeters on first shot in a new environment. He filed it in a new box, a box he hadn't used before. He didn't have a label for it yet. He walked away without saying anything else. Week 1 went quickly. The cohort settled into its patterns. The Therial Cadet was the top performer on Coalition standard weapons. Neural interface response times off the charts. The Draxon pair were devastating at close-range rapid fire. 3 Keth were dominant on heavy systems. And Lena was doing something that didn't fit any of the standard performance categories. She was consistently top 3 at everything past 300 meters. Not top 1, top 3. On a weapon with no electronic assists, no targeting computation, no neural link, just a manual scope and a notebook. And that breathing thing. The other cadets had started to notice the breathing thing. She went very still before a shot. Not tense still, settled still. Like a specific kind of quiet, she breathed out, not a short breath, a long, slow, controlled evacuation of air, and then she fired in the pause after, in the moment between exhale and inhale, when the body is most still. What is that? Serac asked her after the week's final session. What? The breathing. Before the shot, respiratory pause, she said. The body moves when it breathes, tiny micro-movements. In the pause between exhale and inhale, there's about a second of stillness. You fire in that second. Yes. Serac was quiet. Our targeting assists compensate for movement, he said. They do, she said, but they're compensating after the fact. I'm removing the movement first. He thought about that. That's slower, he said, per shot. Yes, she said, much slower per shot. She paused. I only need 1, she said. Week 3, long-range qualification. The range extended to 800 meters. For energy weapons, this wasn't particularly notable. Energy weapons didn't have the same ballistic drop issues as physical projectiles. Point and shoot, essentially, once the targeting system locked. For Lena's rifle, 800 meters was a completely different problem. Bullet drop, wind, temperature, earth spin, station rotation. Equivalent, each variable stacked, and she had to calculate all of them manually. In the notebook, Devick had added an observer to her lane. Instructor candidate Voss, a Keth who specialized in ballistics physics. Voss had been briefed on the situation. She came in skeptical. She stood behind Lena at 800 meters. She watched Lena open the notebook, watched her read the environmental sensors, write numbers, calculate. What's your drop compensation? Voss said. 4.7 meters at this range, Lena said. Station humidity is higher than standard. You calculated that coefficient. The scope has a drop chart, Lena said, but the chart assumes standard atmospheric conditions. I adjust in your head. In the notebook first, then in my head. She paused. After you do it a few thousand times, it gets faster. A few thousand, Voss said, flatly. I've been shooting this rifle since I was 12, Lena said. I'm 24 now. Voss did some math. She didn't say anything else. Lena settled. She looked at the target through the scope. She adjusted the elevation dial, 2.5 turns, small left windage correction. She wrote the final numbers in the notebook. She breathed out, long, slow. The pause. She fired. 812 milliseconds of flight time. The target registered a hit. Voss looked at the coordinates, 6.8 millimeters from center. At 800 meters, Manual weapon, manual calculation, no electronic assistance. She looked at the target for a long time. Cadet, she said, instructor candidate. On Earth, she said carefully. What is the standard long-range training distance for this weapon type? Lena thought for a second. Competitive standard is 1,000 meters, she said. Some military programs extend to 1,500. You train to 1,500 meters. I have done some 1,500 work, she said. My personal best is 1,460 at competition. Voss turned and walked directly to Devik's office. She didn't knock. She walked in, she put her data tablet on his desk, she pointed at the hit coordinates. Devik looked at them. He already knew what they were. He had been watching on the feed. She said she trains to 1,500. Voss said, I know. Our range only goes to 1,200. I know, Devik said. A pause. Sir, Voss said, the ballistic calculations she's performing manually are graduate-level applied physics. I know. She's doing them in a notebook. In about 90 seconds, Devik said, yes. Voss stood there. She said she's been doing this for 12 years, she said. Since she was 12 years old, Devik said. Who teaches a 12-year-old long-range ballistics? Devik looked out the window of his office at the range. Apparently, he said, humans do. Week 5. The Cotort hit the advanced qualification series. Moving targets. Variable conditions. Time pressure. This was where the field separated. Raw accuracy wasn't enough anymore. You needed to track, predict, adjust in real time. Energy weapon targeting assists handled most of this automatically. For Lena, it was a new problem, a target range with a manually operated bolt action. She had to calculate the lead distance, the amount she needed to fire ahead of the target to account for its movement during the bullet's flight time. At 500 meters with a target moving at standard coalition speed, that was roughly 1.4 meters of lead. At 700 meters, it was 2 meters of lead, and the target was irregular. It wasn't moving in a straight line. It was the coalition standard evasion pattern. Acceleration, deceleration, direction changes. The targeting assists of the other cadets struggled with irregular movement. They were computing, and the target was already somewhere else. Lena did something different. She didn't track the target. She watched it. She watched it for about 30 seconds before she picked up the rifle. Just watched. The Keth cadet next to her, Ravar, who had become somewhat grudgingly fascinated by her process, kept his mouth shut for about 20 seconds. Then, you're not shooting, he said. Not yet, she said. The clock is running. I know, you're watching it. I'm learning its pattern, she said, not looking away from the target. It's a randomized evasion algorithm, Ravar said. It doesn't have a pattern. Everything has a pattern, she said. Randomized means randomized within parameters, she said. There's a maximum speed, a maximum turn rate, a minimum straight line distance between direction changes. Those parameters create a shape. I'm reading the shape. Another 10 seconds. She picked up the rifle. She settled. She watched the target for 3 more seconds. She fired, hit. She reloaded, manual bolt. 4 seconds. She fired again. Hit. She fired 3 more times, 5 out of 5, on a moving target. With a manual bolt-action rifle, the range went quiet. Ravar stared at the scoring board. You read a randomized algorithm, he said. I read the behavioral envelope the algorithm operates in, she said, making a note. The target can't move faster than its maximum speed. It can't turn tighter than its minimum radius. Within those constraints, the pattern is limited. How do you know what the constraints are? I've been watching them shoot since day 1, she said. I mapped the movement parameters in my notebook. She held it up. Week 2. Ravar looked at the notebook, then at the targets, then at Devik, who was standing at the range command position. Devik was not watching the other cadets. He was watching Lana. His expression was unreadable, which for a Vorkai usually meant he was recalculating something significant. Devik called Lana to his office that afternoon. She came in. Sit, he said. She sat. He put her performance file on the desk. He had been adding to it since day 1. It was getting thick. Cadet Vasek, he said. Sir, I'm going to ask you something directly. Okay. How long have you been tracking the movement parameters of our simulation targets? Since day 3, she said, before you reached the moving target qualification. I like to know what's coming, she said. If the information is available, I collect it. Devik was quiet. The notebook, he said. What else is in it? She thought for a moment. Environmental conditions for each lane each day. Station ventilation patterns and how they change by time of day. Observed performance patterns of each cadet. Which ones rush their shots? Which ones hold too long? What conditions affect them most? Devik stared. You're tracking the other cadets, he said. I'm learning from them, she said. And I'm noting how conditions affect different weapon systems. For situational awareness, in case you end up operating alongside them, or operating against them, she said. Then, quickly, in an exercise scenario, sir, Devik looked at the notebook. He thought about the week 2 entry, movement parameters. He thought about the 30 seconds of observation before she picked up the rifle. He thought about 5 for 5 on a moving target with a bolt action. Cadet, he said, sir, on Earth, is this how everyone shoots?
She thought about it.
The competitive community, yes, she said. The military community, yes. The hunting community, yes. Most people who take it seriously, manual calculation, environmental tracking, behavioral analysis of the target. That's just long-range shooting, she said. You have to account for the world between you and the target. The world doesn't stop existing because you want a clean shot. Devik was quiet for a long time. Our targeting assists account for the world, he said. They account for the world they can measure, she said. And then carefully, because he was her instructor. There are things they can't measure. Like what? Intent, she said. A target that has a targeting assist following it will sometimes behave in ways the assist can't predict. Because the target is doing something the algorithm doesn't model. She paused. A person watching a target actually watching, reading behavior can sometimes catch that. Predictive analysis, Devik said. Pattern reading, she said. It's not complicated, it's just slow. Takes more time to build, takes more time to apply. She paused again, but it's not dependent on the electronics working. The room was quiet. Devik thought about that last sentence for a long time. Week 7, the electronic warfare module. This was the part of the course that instructors loved and cadets hated, because it was the part where all your equipment stopped working. Jamming, interference, system disruption. Coalition combat operations happen in contested electronic environments. Targeting assists that everyone relied on became unreliable, or stopped entirely. The standard curriculum spent week 7 teaching cadets to function in degraded systems, which was important. Which was also, Devik had always privately believed, something you could never fully teach in a week, because when you stripped away the assists, you weren't just stripping away tools, you were stripping away the entire methodology. Cadets who had been taught to shoot by interfacing with a targeting system were suddenly trying to shoot without one. It was like taking away someone's translation device and asking them to keep the conversation going. They knew what they wanted to say. They just didn't have the infrastructure to say it. Lena didn't have that problem, because Lena had never had the infrastructure. She had brought a 40-year-old bolt-action rifle because that was her weapon, because that was what she knew. And her weapon didn't jam when the electronics went down. Her scope didn't need power. Her notebook didn't need a network connection. She walked into the first electronic warfare session. She set up in her lane. She looked at the degraded conditions. She looked at her notebook. She made 3 adjustments. She shot the first target. Hit. Second target. Hit. Third target. Hit. The cadet to her left was rebooting his targeting assist for the second time. The cadet to her right had gone to manual override and was shooting with approximately half his normal accuracy. Lena was shooting at her normal accuracy, which is to say she was shooting better than almost everyone else in the room. In the conditions specifically designed to break the cohort down to fundamentals. She was already at fundamentals. She had always been at fundamentals. The range fell quiet as the other cadets noticed, one by one, the noise of electronic systems rebooting and manual overrides activating, and frustrated Keth swearing under their breath. All of it fell away, and they watched Lana Vasic work. Ravar, next to her, paused completely. He stopped trying to fix his assist. He watched her settle. He watched the breathing. Out. Long, slow. The pause. The shot. He watched the target register. He looked at his own weapon. He looked at hers. How do you account for movement without the assist? He said. Kentucky windage, she said. What? It's a human expression you estimate, based on experience, based on what you've seen the target do. She paused, based on feel. Feel, he said. It sounds imprecise, she said. It is imprecise. But it's better than nothing when everything else is down. Can you teach me? He said. She looked at him. It takes years, she said honestly. He looked at the jammed range. He looked at the targets he hadn't hit. Start, he said. Devik had been watching. He was always watching. He called Instructor Candidate Voss that evening. She came to his office. She had been watching too. 7.4 meters, she said. She didn't sit down. She was past sitting down about this. Average accuracy across all cadets during electronic warfare simulation, 7.4 meters. I know, Devik said. Vosik's average accuracy during electronic warfare simulation, 7.1 millimeters, Devik said. I know. A silence. She got slightly better during jamming conditions, Voss said. Yes, her accuracy improved when we degraded the environment. Yes, Voss put her tablet down. She sat, because her legs had apparently decided this was a sitting down kind of information. Why, she said. I've been reading, Devik said. Human marksmanship doctrine, military and civilian. And their approach to long-range shooting developed over centuries without electronic assistance. The entire methodology assumes that you are solving the problem with the calculation, observation, and practice. We know this. Their weapons are primitive. Their weapons are primitive, Devik agreed. Their methodology is not. He paused. The electronic assistance we give our cadets is a tool. Vosik's methodology is a skill. Tools fail. Skills persist. Voss looked at the range feed. The day session was over, but Lena was still there, in the dim lighting of the closed range, setting up targets at the far end, working alone. She's practicing, Voss said. She practices 2 hours every evening, Devik said. She has since day one. We don't require evening practice. No, he said. We don't. She's doing it voluntarily. Yes. Because, I asked her, Devik said. She said, there's always something to refine. Voss watched her set up. The target watched her write in the notebook, watched the familiar settle, the breathing, the pause, the shot. What is she refining at this point? Voss said. I asked that too, Devik said. What did she say? He was quiet for a moment. She said she's working on reading target behavior at range under low light conditions. Different species move differently in low light. She's cataloging the patterns. Voss turned slowly. She's cataloging how different species move in low light, in case she ever needs to operate in that condition, Devik said. She's cataloging it now. Week 7, she started week 3, he said. The room was very quiet. The notebook, Voss said. Yes, Devik said. How much of it is target data and environmental data and cadet behavioral patterns? Devik thought. I would estimate, he said carefully, that the notebook is one of the most comprehensive close observation intelligence documents ever compiled about this academy, by a cadet, in 7 weeks, because she naturally does this, because she doesn't know how to not do this, Devik said. It's not a strategy for her. It's not a tactic. It's just how she processes an environment she's operating in. She collects everything. She files everything. She uses everything. Voss looked at him. The species file, she said. What does it say about human observation behavior? Devik pulled it up. He had read it 6 times now. Persistus hunters, he said. Their fundamental evolutionary strategy was to observe prey for extended period, learn individual behavioral patterns, predict movement, and then operate on superior information. He paused. They didn't outrun their prey, they outknew it. He looked at the range, at Lena in the dim light notebook. Settle, breath, shot. She isn't just a shooter, he said quietly. No, Voss said. She's doing the same thing to this range that her ancestors did to prey on the plains of Africa. He paused. She has spent 7 weeks learning to hunt this environment. And everything in it, Voss said. And everything in it. Week 10. The final qualification scenario. The capstone of the weapons program. A full tactical exercise, multiple target types, variable conditions. Electronic warfare active, moving objectives, time constraints, real-world simulation. The cohort would be split into 2 teams, opposing teams. They would use simulation rounds, non-lethal, impact scoring, Everything real except the damage. Devik announced the team assignments, shared Lena with Ravar. Ravar had spent 3 weeks trying to learn what she did. He wasn't anywhere near her level, but he was better. The exercise was 12 hours. The teams had no contact for the first 2 hours as they set up positions. Then it went live. Devik watched from the command center. On his screens, he could track both teams' positions via the exercise monitoring system. What he saw in hour 1 surprised him. Most team in this exercise and every exercise he had run, spread out and pushed forward, aggressive, attritional, trying to cover ground. Lena's team didn't move. For 40 minutes, they found elevated positions, and they stopped moving, and they watched. The Keth cadet Ravar was getting impatient. Devik had sound monitoring on team comms. "We're not moving," Ravar said. "Not yet," Lena said. "They're taking ground." "Let them," she said. "They're telling me exactly where everyone is." Ravar went quiet. "You're mapping them," he said. "I've been mapping them for 10 weeks, she said. "Now I'm confirming the map." Another pause. "When do we move?" he said. "When I know where everyone is," she said. "And when I have a clean line to the 3 highest value positions." "What are the 3 highest value positions?" "Their sniper, their command element, and the cadet on their left flank who's been aggressive since week 1. Take those 3 out of play and the rest are reactive." Devik leaned forward. She had already identified the 3 tactical priorities of the opposing team, based on 10 weeks of observation. Before the exercise started, at the 40-minute mark, Lena's team moved. They moved once, to a single pre-selected position. In the next 8 minutes, Lena made 5 shots. Each one required a different calculation, different distance, different angle, different environmental condition. One shot was through a gap in the obstacle course that existed for exactly 1.4 seconds as the target moved. She had apparently calculated when that gap would exist and been ready. 5 shots. 5 simulation round hits. The opposing team sniper, command element lead, aggressive left flank cadet, and 2 others who had been in position she had identified before the exercise even started. The opposing team went from structured and advancing to confused and reactive in 8 minutes. Lena's team cleaned up the rest over the next 3 hours. The exercise ended in hour 4. Fastest resolution time the Academy had recorded. The debrief. The cohort sat together. Devik stood at the front. He was still processing what he had watched. "The exercise outcome," he said. "Team B, Vasik's team, achieved full simulation dominance in 4 hours and 17 minutes, record time." The opposing team cadets looked at the floor. Ravar looked quietly proud. Lena looked like she was already thinking about what she'd have done differently. "Team B's tactical approach," Devik said. He pulled up the movement data. 40 minutes of initial observation. Single repositioning movement, 5 rapid priority target engagements followed by controlled advance against a disrupted opposition. He paused. "Cadet Vasik," he said. "Sir, the 40 minutes of observation, the priority target selection. This was pre-planned before the exercise." "Yes, sir." "Based on what?" 10 weeks of observing the cohort," she said. "I know how every cadet in this room responds under pressure. Who rushes, who leads, who follows, who is most dangerous when they have structure and least dangerous when they lose it." The room was absolutely quiet. "You walked into this exercise," Devik said, "already knowing how to beat everyone in it." "I had a strong initial hypothesis," she said carefully. "I wanted to confirm it before I acted on it. Hence the 40 minutes. Hence the 40 minutes. Devik looked at the cohort, at 41 cadets who had been in the same training program as Lena for 10 weeks, who had watched the same sessions, eaten in the same facility, run the same qualifications. "Did anyone else do this?" he said. Silence. "Did anyone compile behavioral data on their fellow cadets over the training period?" Silence. "Did anyone pre-identify tactical priorities for the final exercise before it began?" Surik raised his hand, slowly. "I thought about who the most dangerous cadets would be," he said. "You thought about it," Devik said. "Yes, generally. Did you have specific notes?" "No." Devik nodded. He looked at Lena's notebook, which was sitting on the desk in front of her, as it always was. "Cadet Vasik," he said. "How many pages is that notebook?" She checked. "Currently 241, she said. "In 10 weeks. It's a small notebook," she said. I'm on my third. Someone in the back of the room made a very small sound. Not quite a word, not quite a laugh, something in between. After the debrief, Devik asked Lena to stay. She stayed. He sat down. He looked tired, not physically the other kind. The notebook, he said, sir. In a real operation, in a contested environment, against an actual adversary, how would you apply what you do? She thought about it. I'd need observation time before action, she said. How long depends on the adversary, and if you don't have observation time, if you're thrown into contact immediately, then I'd start collecting data during contact, she said. First contact tells you a lot. How they move, how they communicate, what their decision lag is, whether they escalate or hold. She paused. You start on day one, you're already building the map, even under fire. Especially under fire, she said. That's when they're most themselves. Devik was quiet. He had been a weapons instructor for 22 years. He had believed deeply and specifically that marksmanship was about physical skill, accuracy, control, speed, and it was. But he was sitting across from someone who had reframed the entire question. It wasn't about hitting the target. It was about knowing the target so completely that hitting was just the final step, almost a formality. The rifle, he said. Sir, you brought it because you were comfortable with it. Yes, not because it's better. It's better for what I do, she said. It's worse for a lot of other things. What is it better for? She thought. It teaches you honesty, she said. There's no electronic layer between me and the shot. If I'm wrong about the wind, I miss. If I'm wrong about the distance, I miss. If I rush, I miss. She looked at the rifle. Every variable is visible. Every mistake is mine. And that makes you better. It made me pay attention, she said. For 12 years, I couldn't afford to not pay attention, so I didn't. Devik looked at the rifle. 40 years old. Steel and wood in a scope that worked intermittently. A museum piece. He had called it that. In his head on day one, he was reconsidering the entire concept of museum piece. Because a museum piece was something that used to be useful and wasn't anymore. This was something that had always been useful, in a way that most people had simply forgotten. I'm revising the program, he said. Lena looked at him. Not significantly, he said, but the electronic warfare module. It's currently 1 week. Yes, sir. I'm extending it to 3. He paused. And I'm adding an observation methodology component, pre-action target analysis, pattern mapping. Another pause. I don't have a curriculum for it yet, he said. Lena was quiet. I could help, she said. I've been doing it for a while. I know, he said. He looked at the notebook. I was going to ask, he said. She opened it. She turned to a page in the middle. This is what I've been doing, she said.
If it helps.
He looked at the page, dense, precise notes. Observation times, variables, predictions, confirmation of predictions, a complete methodology, built over 10 weeks, in a small notebook, in a rail-mounted scope, and a bolt-action rifle, and 241 pages of paying attention. Devik stared at that page for a long time. He was thinking about 42 cadets, 16 species, 1 human, who had walked in with a weapon everyone laughed at, and had spent 10 weeks learning how to beat every single one of them, not because she was the fastest, not because she was the strongest, because she had watched and remembered, and on the day it mattered, she already knew. He looked up. Leave the notebook, he said. She looked at it. I can make you a copy, she said. He smiled for the first time in 10 weeks. Make me a copy, he said. Keep the original. She nodded. You're going to need it, he said. She looked at him. Where am I going, she said. He slid a posting order across the desk. She picked it up. She read it. Coalition Advanced Intelligence Operations. Field designation. Effective immediately upon completion of program.
They've been watching your record, he said.
Since when, she said. Week 3, he said. Moving targets, 5 for 5. She looked at the posting order. She looked at the notebook. She thought about 12 years of a 40-year-old rifle, about the world between her and the target, about paying attention, always paying attention. Okay, she said. She put the posting order in the notebook. She closed it. She picked up the rifle. She walked out. Devik sat in the empty room for a while. He thought about day one, when she'd walked up to the firing line, and the Keth cadet had laughed at the rifle, and she hadn't said a word. She had just checked her bolt and started paying attention. He thought about everything that had followed. He picked up his data tablet. He filed his end-of-course report. In the summary field, he wrote one sentence. Revised species threat classification for Terran humans. See attached observational record. He attached 241 pages. He sent it to the Coalition General Staff. He sent it to the Intelligence Division. He sent it to the Academy Curriculum Board. And then he sent it to the Species Assessment Division. With a note. Your classification system measures physical capability. You should also measure what they do with their eyes and their notebooks and 12 years of paying attention to a world that didn't make it easy. Reclassify immediately. We have been significantly wrong.